Everyone talks about controlling emotions, but almost no one tells the truth. You will never eliminate them. You can only learn to master them. This is the reality that almost no one has the courage to tell you, and that is precisely why I want to start this video in a direct and provocative way. Because if you have already realized that emotions often end up controlling you more than you would like, comment on the word "right now" control down here to show that you are aware and ready to change. This game, think about it. Since childhood, we've heard phrases like "don't cry," "don't get angry," "stay calm," as if it were possible to turn off our emotions with a simple button. But what happens? The more you try to stifle your feelings, the more they gain strength until they overflow in the worst moments. Stoicism teaches us something completely different. It's not about erasing what you feel. It's about learning to deal with them intelligently, practically, and disciplinedly. It's understanding that emotions are not enemies, but messengers, signals of something that needs to be observed. But the modern world sells precisely the opposite. Either you must become a stone without feelings, or you must surrender completely to them. Neither extreme works. What truly changes your life is the ability to recognize, embrace, and then dominate your emotions, putting you in control instead of being swept away by momentary impulses. And that's why this video is so important, because here you'll discover truths that almost no one talks about, not with pre-packaged self-help phrases, but with the practical wisdom of Stoic philosophers applied to the real lives of those facing anxiety, anger, fear, or even that feeling of always reacting instead of choosing how to act. I want you to not just listen, but participate in this process. So leave a word in the comments that sums up what challenges you most. It could be anxiety, anger, fear, or even focus. That's our starting point. Today, you'll understand why it's not a sign of weakness to feel emotions, but rather a sign of strength to learn to master them. Imagine the power of waking up and not letting someone's harsh words ruin your entire day. Imagine being able to look at a huge problem and remain calm when everyone around you is losing control. This isn't magic, it's not a gift, it's not genetics, it's training, it's discipline, it's practice, it's Stoic philosophy applied to everyday life. And here, in this video, you'll learn how to take the first steps on this journey. So stay with me until the end, because I'll show you the path to transforming each emotion into an opportunity for growth, instead of an invisible prison that limits you. Remember the powerful quote I gave at the beginning. Remember this: emotions will never disappear, but you can learn to master them. And mastering emotions is, ultimately, mastering yourself. And those who can master themselves become unbeatable in the world. The biggest lie we've been told is that of absolute self-control. This illusory idea that the truly wise, the truly strong man or woman simply feels nothing. How many times have you heard someone say, "I don't feel anger anymore. Nothing touches me anymore. I'm cold as a stone." It sounds inspiring, but it's just a farce packaged as a virtue. The truth is, there's no such thing as not feeling. If you're human, you'll feel anger, fear, anxiety, joy, frustration, desire, and even envy at some point in your life. The mistake lies in believing that the path to emotional strength is to annihilate these emotions, when in fact, true power lies in not being a slave to them. This is what Stoic philosophers taught us centuries ago. Emotion isn't the problem. The problem is when it decides for you, when it takes the wheel of your life and you become a passenger. Think about how many times you've regretted something said in the heat of anger, or a rash decision made in the heat of fear. Impulse speaks louder, and suddenly you're no longer in charge. That's when the illusion of absolute self-control falls away, and the need for real, practical, and conscious control emerges. And before I continue, I want you to interact with me. Comment below with the word emotion if you've ever felt a decision being dominated by impulse. I want to see how many of you have noticed this internal battle happening in your daily life. True self-control isn't about becoming a statue immune to life's storms, but about learning to navigate them without being swept away. Imagine a sailor on the high seas. He doesn't have the power to control the wind or the waves, but he can learn to adjust the sails and the rudder to avoid sinking. The same goes for our emotions. They arise, some stronger than others, some unexpectedly. But what differentiates an ordinary person from someone who practices Stoicism is the ability to recognize what they feel, pause, reflect, and choose how to act instead of reacting automatically. It's not about coldness, but about wisdom. It's not about ignoring emotions, but about translating them into useful information for your journey. When you feel anger, it shows that something has touched your limits. When you feel fear, it means there's a risk that needs to be assessed. When you feel sadness, there's a loss or a value that has been violated. Every emotion is a signal. Now, if you don't know how to interpret these signals and simply react, you end up being dominated. And this is where the difference lies between living as a slave to one's own feelings and living as someone who dominates one's own inner world. And perhaps the hardest part to hear, but also the most liberating, is that this struggle never ends. There's no end point where you simply stop feeling. Every day life will test you. Traffic will test your patience. Unfair criticism will poke your ego. An opportunity can inflate your pride. The question isn't whether you'll feel it or not, but what you'll do with it when you do. It's in that exact moment that you have the chance to prove your strength. Mastering your emotions is a daily practice. It's discipline, it's training, and every conscious choice strengthens this invisible muscle called self-control. Now, I want you to be part of this process with me. Write here in the comments what emotion most dominates you. It could be anxiety, anger, fear, or any other. Let's transform this space into a Stoic training ground, where each comment is a step towards self-knowledge and true freedom. Because in the end, it's not about erasing what you feel, but about ensuring that the final decision is always yours, not the emotions knocking at your door. The truth that Stoic philosophy shows us, and which most prefer to ignore, is simple and straightforward. You have no control over external events, but you always have power over how you react to them. This statement seems obvious, but when you stop and think about it, you realize that this is precisely where life's greatest trap lies. How many times have you wasted energy, time, and even health trying to change something that was beyond your control? An unfair criticism, someone else's mood, traffic, a dismissal, a loss. None of these are under your control, yet your mind insists on fighting the inevitable. And this fight, besides being lost in advance, only increases your pain. The Stoics remind us, suffering does not come from what happens, but from our interpretation of the facts. The same situation can destroy one person and strengthen another, and the difference lies in how each person chooses to react. It's as if life were the wind. You can't stop the storm, but you can adjust the sails. And if this statement has ever resonated with you at some point in your life, write the word here in the comments, reaction, because I want to see who is willing to assume this power to choose in the face of circumstances. When you understand this distinction between what is and isn't within your control, a huge weight lifts from your shoulders. Suddenly, what once seemed like uncontrollable chaos begins to organize itself in your mind. It's not that problems disappear, but they shift. What doesn't depend on you ceases to be a source of anguish, and what does depend on you becomes the focus of your energy. This is mental freedom. This is practical wisdom. You can't stop someone from mistreating you, but you can choose not to let it define your value. You can't control whether the market will change, but you can decide how you will adapt. You can't control death, but you can control how you value life while you have it. The power of reaction is, in practice, the power of choice, but most prefer to live as hostages to what happens, as if they were puppets being manipulated by invisible strings. But the Stoic awakens to reality. No one can decide for you how you will respond. This is your inner strength, and when you embrace this, you begin to realize that life is not about mastering everything, but about mastering yourself in everything. And perhaps this is the most provocative point. If you still believe that happiness depends on controlling the world around you, you are doomed to frustration. There will always be something that escapes your control, always an unpredictable variable, an unexpected turn, an unplanned loss. But if you understand that your peace depends exclusively on your reaction, you discover a strength that no one can steal from you. Life will test you, no doubt about it, with challenges, difficult people, unfair situations. What separates the strong from the fragile is not the absence of these tests, but how they choose to face them. That's why I want to challenge you now. Think of a recent moment when something beyond your control shook you, and write here in the comments what your chosen reaction was. There's no need to be ashamed, because we all make mistakes. But this exercise is precisely the first step to becoming aware and starting to practice. In the end, you will realize that there is nothing more powerful than owning what has always been in your hands, your response. And when you master your response, you master yourself. And he who masters himself becomes invincible before the world. The greatest prison anyone can live in is not outside, but within themselves. It is the prison of reactivity. Every time you react impulsively, overcome by anger, haste, or desire, you surrender your freedom to the first spark that arises. And the worst part is that often you don't even realize you're chaining yourself. How many times have you said something without thinking and then stewed in it, full of regret? How many times have you made a decision in the heat of the moment and then had to deal with the dire consequences? This is the trap of reactivity. The moment you let your emotions decide for you, you become their slave. The Stoics warned of this danger because they knew that true freedom is not doing whatever you feel, but having the power to choose consciously. He who reacts without thinking surrenders his freedom to the first spark of anger or desire. This phrase should echo in your mind whenever you feel the urge to explode or throw yourself into something without considering the consequences. And before I continue, I want you to interact with me. Comment below the word freedom if you want to be the master of your choices and not a hostage to your impulses. The big problem with reactivity is that it's often quick, almost automatic, but its effects linger for a long time. Think about a relationship. A thoughtless word can leave scars that last for years. Think about a financial decision made in the heat of the moment. Regret can linger for months or even decades. Think about a fight in traffic, an aggressive comment online, a snappy response at work. Small moments of reactivity that turn into big problems because the choice wasn't conscious. It was just an emotional release. Regret always comes later, bringing with it resentment, guilt, and the feeling that we could have done things differently. And we could have, if we had paused for a few seconds to reflect before acting. Stoicism teaches exactly this. The power of creating this space between stimulus and response. It's in this space, however small, that your freedom resides. When you learn to expand this space, you begin to realize that you don't have to be a slave to your impulses. You can't control whether someone will provoke you, but you can control whether or not you'll take the bait. You can't control the desire that arises, but you can control whether you feed it or resist it. That's where true strength lies. And this is the reflection I want you to take away. Every time you react automatically, you give up your autonomy and give circumstances the power to define your destiny. But every time you pause, breathe, and choose consciously, you grow stronger. Reacting impulsively seems easier, but in the long run, it's very costly. Choosing calmly requires discipline, but brings peace, clarity, and much greater results. The modern world constantly tries to program us to react. Notifications on our phones, advertisements that exploit our desires, stressful situations designed to rob us of our patience. But those who practice Stoicism understand that they don't have to live this way. True freedom isn't external, it's internal. It's the freedom to not be controlled by one's own emotions, to not be manipulated by the environment, to not be held hostage by anger or desire. So I repeat, comment here, freedom. If you're ready to take control of your choices, every time you affirm this, you're not just interacting, you're training your mind to remember that the final decision should always be yours. After all, being free isn't about doing whatever you feel like doing, but about choosing wisely what's truly worth doing. The Stoic secret to true self-control isn't repressing emotions or pretending they're not affecting us, but practicing something much simpler and more powerful: pausing. The impulse is swift, almost automatic, but pausing creates space for reason to enter the scene. When something provokes us, when anger or desire pushes us to act in the heat of the moment, the Stoic doesn't rush. He breathes, observes, and only then acts. This is real power. It's not about eliminating what you feel, but about placing a conscious filter between emotion and action. Imagine how different your life would have been if, before responding to criticism, you had waited a few seconds. If, before making a risky financial decision, you had taken a deep breath. If, before exploding at someone you love, you had stopped to reflect. It's in this space between stimulus and response that freedom happens. And that's precisely why I want your interaction. Comment below with the word reason if you believe that thinking before acting has already changed your life, even in small situations. This seemingly simple practice can completely transform the way you deal with the world. This discipline of pausing and reflecting isn't natural. It requires constant practice. Our instincts push us to react immediately, as if every provocation were an attack that must be responded to, as if every desire must be satisfied instantly. But that's precisely where the weakness lies. What differentiates the Stoic from those who live dominated by circumstances is the ability to not let themselves be swept away by this automatic flow. The Stoic practices self-control every day, in the little things, in traffic, when they choose not to get angry, in difficult conversations, when they choose to listen before speaking, in anxiety, when they observe what they feel instead of despairing. These small, accumulated practices build immense strength, because ultimately, if you can't control your reactions in simple situations, how will you be able to stand firm in truly big and challenging moments? The secret isn't waiting for chaos to practice self-control. It's cultivating this skill daily in the most banal situations until it becomes a habit. This is Stoic philosophy applied to real-life practice. Less theory, more discipline, less impulsiveness, more awareness. And perhaps the most inspiring part of this practice is realizing that the more you practice, the freer you become. Because not being dominated by emotions is gaining an autonomy that no one can take away. The world may continue to try to provoke you. People may try to get on your nerves. Life may bring unexpected losses. But if you master the pause, if you master reflection, you also master your reaction. And when you master your reaction, you master yourself. And those who master themselves are invincible before the world. This is the true Stoic secret to self-control. It's not stifling feelings, but transforming every emotion into an invitation to reflect, and every impulse into an opportunity to practice discipline. So before we move on, I want to challenge you again. Remember a recent situation in which you acted on reason instead of impulse, and comment here what it was. This exercise isn't just for engagement, It's for you to reinforce in your mind how effective this practice is, because each time you choose reason, you reaffirm that you are master of yourself. And in the end, there is no greater victory than that. Emotional control isn't a mysterious gift that some are born with, and others aren't, but rather a skill that develops with daily practice. The problem is that most people expect to become strong only when a crisis hits, as if it were possible to learn to swim in the midst of a shipwreck. It doesn't work that way. Self-control isn't born in crises. It's born in the silent everyday practice. It's in the small situations that you strengthen your mind. When you choose not to respond immediately to a provocation, when you decide to remain calm in traffic, when you resist giving up on a goal because of a fleeting distraction. Every moment of daily life is a training ground. The Stoics knew this and used every situation in life as an opportunity to strengthen themselves internally. So, if you truly want to develop this strength that sets you free, comment below, training, because I want to see who is willing to practice this power daily without waiting for life to put you against the wall to learn. What many people don't realize is that the mind works like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it gets, and the more you neglect it, the weaker it gets. That's why we see so many people overcome by anxiety, anger, or frustration. They didn't prepare themselves beforehand. They didn't train enough to endure. It's like expecting to have the stamina to run a marathon without ever having even taken a walk. Stoic training is constant, silent, almost invisible, but it makes all the difference when the real challenge arises. And here's the point. Don't wait for major tragedies or stressful moments to try to exercise emotional control. Start now with the little things, because they are what prepare you for the big ones. If you practice patience when the grocery line is slow, you'll be better prepared to remain calm when a serious argument arises. If you practice discipline to not waste time on distractions, you'll be better prepared to handle big responsibilities in the future. That's the real secret. Practice in the ordinary to be strong in the extraordinary. And that's the beauty of Stoicism, transforming ordinary life into a field of personal development. There's no secret talent, there's consistency. Outsiders might think you're naturally calm, naturally controlled, but only you will know how much you've practiced in silence to get to this point. True transformation doesn't happen in public, but in private. It's when you choose not to fight over small things, when you hold your tongue instead of responding impulsively, when you maintain discipline even when no one is watching. These are the moments that shape your mind and build your strength. And I want you to actively participate in this process. Comment here which area of your life needs the most training. It could be patience, focus, discipline, or tolerance. Writing this down is the first step toward acknowledging your willingness to practice. Remember, it's not the crisis that gives you self-control, it's the daily training that prepares you for it. And the more you practice, the more you realize that mastering your emotions is the greatest power you can achieve. Getting this far means you've already realized the difference between living as a slave to your emotions and living as someone who has learned to master themselves. What no one tells you is that controlling your emotions doesn't mean becoming stone-like, cold, insensitive, or indifferent to the world. Quite the opposite. It's learning to be master of your mind, using each emotion as information, as a signal, without allowing it to dictate the course of your life. This is true freedom. He who rules himself will never be ruled by anyone. This is the key that the Stoics understood centuries ago and that remains relevant today. Because in the end, the fight isn't against others. It's not against the world. It's not against circumstances. The fight is against your own uncontrolled reactions, against the impulses that try to steal your clarity, against the anxiety that insists on imprisoning you When you understand this, you discover that you can walk much more lightly because you no longer need to waste energy trying to control the uncontrollable, but can invest all your strength in governing what has always been in your hands, your mind, your attitude, your response. And now I want you to take the next step on this journey. If this video resonated with you, if it awakened in you the awareness that the real battle happens within, then it shows that you're committed to this path. Leave your like because it helps spread this message to more people who need to hear this truth. Share this video with someone you know who is being overwhelmed by emotions and needs a reminder that there is another way. And, most importantly, comment below. Stoic to show that you're committed to mastering your emotions. It's not just a word, it's a declaration. It's a commitment to yourself. This space here is more than a video. It's a training ground for your mind, and each comment is like a brick that strengthens this construction. Always remember, self-control isn't about stifling what you feel. It's about choosing what to do with it. And those who master themselves need fear nothing, because they have already discovered the greatest of all victories, inner victory.